Hello, friends from the Vancouver Latin American Film Festival. I am Cristian Sida, Programming Director. I'm joined by Lina Rodríguez from Toronto. Hola, Lina.
Hola, hola Cristian, hola amigues.
Hola, amigues in Vancouver. As you know, and if you don't know, you can see in our social media and in other pages of films in the website that we're having conversations with directors. Not with all of them because there are so many, but we have a lot of conversations in the website. And this talk that I'm going to have with Lina Rodríguez is about her work and about her film, So Much Tenderness, let's say Colombian-Canadian film, which screens Saturday, September 9, 8:15 at the Cinematheque. And that's going to be a great day. Saturday, there is also a local short film screening before, so it's going to be a lot of people. And this is Lina Rodríguez fourth film. This is actually very bad from our side, but sometimes it's even though we're in the same country, Toronto seems so far. I just met Lina last couple of months ago for the first time, and she's been making films for over 10 years. And I've been at this organization for 17 years. So, and we are the Latin American Film Festival. So we hope, and I know in the future we'll show more of your films next year for sure. And Lina, well, welcome. ¿Cómo estás? You are in Toronto. What's up? All good?
Yeah, thanks. No, thanks so much for opening up the space, for inviting the film. I know it's a big country and we're all working together and separately, so it's just nice to connect and yeah, be part of the festival this year. I'm excited. It's a shame I can't be there, but I'm excited that the film is going to be shown in Vancouver in the context of the festival with a short film ahead of time. So what's the short film?
It's called Pacho's Visual Archive by Blanca Marcela Lopez.
Cool. Nice.
So Lina, this is your fourth film, as I say. Your first film was Señoritas, a film that I saw in Havana Film Festival, I remember. You have also This Time Tomorrow, Mis Dos Voces, and other short films. Tell us a bit about this film, and what about your work in general is about. And then we'll talk more about us being Latin Canadians. We want to talk more about your work in general. How do you describe it, and this film especially?
Well, I mean, that's a hard question, but I guess, I mean, this is my first fiction feature film set in Canada. My first two fictions, Señoritas and Mañana Esta Hora, were set in Bogota. So in a way, I mean, consciously and unconsciously, I guess it's the beginning of me trying to deal with this space that we share as immigrants, as Latina Canadians, as Colombian Canadians, of being in between geographies, which is, you know, a state of limbo. And so, yeah, so Much Tenderness is my first fiction feature set in Canada. And although nothing is shot in Colombia, the shadow, the echo of Colombia is very much present in the film, and it follows a Colombian woman who is forced to flee Colombia because her husband is murdered, and then she crosses into the border of Canada from the US in the trunk of a car. And the film sort of explores this idea, or this impossibility, I guess, of feeling settled. So we catch up with her years later after she crosses, and she's being joined by her daughter, who's in university, and they're both trying to, I guess, deal with being here, but we're also coming from somewhere else. And then someone from her past sort of resurfaces in Toronto and shakes this kind of idea of being settled. And I think for me, in terms of what I'm interested in, thinking about Canada and what is Canada, and a country that has, you know, like, even the word settle or being settled is a complicated word in a country that, as we know, is built on, you know, the sort of like genocide and destruction of indigenous peoples who keep resisting. What is it for me as an immigrant to come and be asked to settle? They always ask you, are you settled? I was just in Colombia last week, and people are like, oh, so do you adapt there? So the film sort of comes from this question about what is it to be settled, but also from research with fellow Colombian immigrants and just talking to different people who have come here in different circumstances. I had the privilege to come here because I wanted to. There's many people who have to come here because they have to. So I talked to a bunch of friends, like amigas, with different circumstances. And one of the things that I found in common was this shared sense of being unsettled constantly. So one day you feel like you're here and you're connected to this place and the complexities of this place to a certain extent, and then the next day you feel outside. So I was interested in thinking about that, and also about how we, like the sense of this location, but also how we carry traces of a past that comes with us, and it's very difficult to separate. But then you're also here, so you have like these simultaneous emotions, geographies, times that are contained in you.
Very interesting what you're saying, and that's the part that I wanted to ask you, because and I mentioned, or I don't know if I mentioned before, we're also screening Coyote, which is another Latin Canadian film, but it's by Jatterin Jerkovic. We showed her film Roads to February Dinner Festival a few years ago. And the film of Coyote it's another Latin Canadian film, but taking place in Canada, which you say this is your first film, So Much Tenderness, that takes place in Canada. And I was going to ask you about that, because there are many filmmakers that come to mind, Nicolas Pereda, Germán Gutiérrez, etc., etc., that have made all their body of work outside of Canada, living in Canada and with Canadian funding and being Canadians. And then, but maybe, as you say, we're still settling here. We're a first generation. I've been here about a little more than 20 years. We're the first, I mean, not the first, but still the Latino community is small in many ways compared to others here. So in these two films, in your films, in Coyote, there are films that take place in Canada, and that's very unusual for our culture here, let's say. And you say that was a question I was going to ask you about. Are these stories now taking place here? So what can you comment about your film, and what can you develop more in what you were saying? Maybe unconsciously you're making now this film here because you're settling here, whatever that means.
I mean, I think because you're asking about my other films, so I started making films in Colombia, although I was here, I think unconsciously, as a way to rekindle connections to Colombia, emotional connections. I also made films, like many people of my generation, not only Latino Canadian, but other like new generation of Canadian filmmakers making films with Arts Council money, which is not unique to us. Like Ado Megoyan made films with Arts Council money, but like a group of people kind of making smaller films in this different way. And I think because of the way I made films, and because, I don't know, I think I just wanted to reconnect to Colombia. And then I made these films, Canadian films, in theory, but there was nothing Canadian about it, I guess, besides me, set in Bogota in Spanish. And then one day, so that's Señorita Esa Mañana Hasta Ahora, and I was very interested in female identity and how do we behave and move the way that we do as women within family context. So I was very interested in the mother-daughter relationship. And so to answer your question about my work, like that is something that is also in So Much Tenderness. I'm really interested in this complicated but beautiful relationship between mothers and daughters, and just like women sort of like sharing emotional and physical space in these roles of family and dynamics that come with all of these expectations from society of what you're supposed to do as a mother and as a daughter, and then on top of that as a woman. So I was doing that in my first films, and then my father-in-law, who sadly passed away, once asked me, why do you make films in Canada? You're Canadian. And it was a light comment, but I was thinking about that, like, it's true, like I'm here. So there's something about being here and thinking about there. My parents are there. I came here by myself. So I started writing this film, and I started asking and meeting with friends and people from the Latino community, as I said, to just kind of ask about, like, well, how do you feel here? And I think So Much Tenderness was an attempt to try to think about, through cinema, what it feels to be here. And obviously it's one experience of many, and all experiences are different, but that's a little bit of what brought me to like think about kind of, and from writing So Much Tenderness, I was writing that script, and then I met this incredible woman called Claudia Montoya, who is in the film in So Much Tenderness. She has like one scene that you'll see where she's being asked for advice on how to report someone who works illegally. And Claudia is an immigration settler here in Toronto, and I met her because she's an incredible community weaver, and she helps people settle. She's an immigration settler. So anyway, through that, I came up with the inspiration to make another film, which is called Mis dos Voces, and it's a documentary. And these two films are kind of like cousins, but they're now like these two Canadian films that I've made in Canada, but that are very much dealing with the process of immigration, with feelings of dislocation, and reflecting on ideas of like belonging, but also very much centered on the feminine universe.
Thanks, Lina. And now about the cast of your film in terms of Latin Canadian actors, and also you have non-professional actors. Just tell us a bit about the cast. I think it's a greatly cast film, greatly acted. So just tell us about that part.
Yeah, I mean, I started making films, I guess, like inventing an own way to make films. So Señorita is my first film. My mother, who's a non-actor, ended up playing the mother. So out of necessity, but also out of the process, I ended up having this mixture of actors and non-actors. So we're like people with acting training and non-acting training. And I really like this combination because I feel like it unsettles the ground. So people have to find a different way of listening to each other. And it's not about like executing something that you know, because filmmaking is very much a process of discovery for me. So anyway, with this in mind, we did a search for the daughter role, which is Lucia, and I was open to actors and non-actors. And I think, as you were saying, kind of is a big country. In theory, the Latina Canadian community is small, but we don't really know each other all the time. So I knew, oh, there's an actor that I know could do these roles. So I did a search myself here with a friend who helped with casting, and then we ended up. So I looked at like young women with no acting training, and then Natalia Aranguren, who I think is an incredible actor, who was actually last year on Rising Stars. She's Colombian. I wanted a Colombian to play a Colombian, because we do live in a country where we've seen, and it's happened in other times where, like, as Latin Americans, we know it's complicated. We have a rich history. It's very layered. So sometimes to have someone with a Colombian accent play a Mexican, I was not going to do that, or have a Portuguese person. So I really wanted to find a Colombian, and I really was hoping to find someone who could bring part of their experience and their own sense of dislocation to the role. And I looked at a lot of like young women with no acting training, and then with some acting training, and then Natalia came along, and I just feel like she has she has her own experience that she injected into the role, but I just think she has a sort of like melancholy, an ability to be playful, and ability to be fierce, and to kind of deal with this expectation of being Latina, which at least I have dealt with sometimes with friends or Canadian friends, where you're supposed to be the one who says things directly. So like this, to kind of like play this role of what it is to be Latina. And then I wanted the mother to be someone from Colombia, because I felt that generationally the mother and the daughter would have a different way of connecting to Canada. And I felt that it was interesting if the mother was played by someone who didn't live here, so they would have a little bit of that distance, and that they spoke English. But so then, I had a casting director in Colombia, and he helped us find Noel Schoenwald, who has a trajectory in Colombia, in theater, in TV, and she's a model. And I feel that, again, I think the complexity of that character of a woman who is like strong and vulnerable, who's a mother, but who also has desire and sensuality, and is very much alive, but is hurt. Noel is just an incredible actor whose face just kind of expresses so much without doing much. So then I was just really lucky we did auditions on Zoom because it was COVID, but she came here from Colombia during COVID. Anyway, it was crazy, but it was a great experience working with her.
Thanks, Lina. So just to finish, to wrap up, just to invite people to see your film. It's the first weekend of the festival, so you have to watch it right away once you see this interview. Why would people go and see your film? And are you going to be making more films taking place in Canada?
I will answer that, but I wanted to say something really important. And I think one of the other things that was a beautiful gift for me to make this film in Canada is that it was an opportunity to also involve people in my community and in my new family. And I think as immigrants, we're building new families. So in my first films, my parents, my mom was in my film. And here I had the opportunity to have friends, amigas, and different people from my community in Toronto who are actors and non-actors. So there's amazing performers like Augusto Vited, who's Venezuelan Canadian performer and plays Lucia's best friend. And for example, they told me like it was such a great chance for them to be able to be queer and Latino in one character. I have friends of mine who Luisa, who performed the interpreter in the film, and she's someone who's not an actor, but she's been translating for her family who came here as refugees all her life. So the film is a mixture, I guess, of documentary and fiction in the sense that there's a lot of people from my community who appear in the film but have a history as well of immigration and belonging. So in that note, I think, I mean, So Much Tenderness was a gift. I think films are a gift. I think it's a way to bring people together and for us to learn and unlearn together. So yeah, I invite you to come and watch the film and hopefully find a connection to seeing ourselves. This is not the only Latina Canadian story, of course, but I think in a country where we lack representation, where we are not really on screen, to just start appearing and especially expanding the representation of what it is to be Latina in Canada. I think obviously it's a contribution to many other people who are working, but hopefully you can come and watch the film and then, yeah, just help us continue expanding who we are on screen.
More films taking place in Canada?
I forgot about that question. I haven't started, I mean, I shot last year and I've just been starting the post-production on a film. It's going to be an experimental film. It's a sort of like a film essay around my mother and me, because I've been dealing with this mother-daughter issues. So it's an experimental film that takes, so we shot in 5 cities in Colombia and Toronto on high 8, Super 8, and digital. So I'm going to start editing that film, and I'm writing a new fiction film called Los Turistas with my partner, Brad Dean, who's my partner in life and in cinema. But it's actually a film it's going to take place all in Colombia, and it's a Canadian couple in Colombia. So.
Okay. Are you acting?
Me? No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
But he acted in your last film.
Yes, it's true. I mean, speaking about this sort of documentary, yeah, my partner is in my new film. Yeah, So Much Tenderness.
Well, Lina Rodríguez, muchas gracias. Thank you very much. And we hope to see you in Vancouver next year. And I'm sure it's going to be a great screening. Just as a fun fact, I'm making the copy of your film right now as we speak in my computer. So this is great.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Christine, to you and the whole team that puts the festival together, volunteers and everyone, for just offering me the space and inviting me to be part of the festival this year. Have a great screening. Thank you.
Super, Lina. Gracias.